Hey, good morning everybody from here in Japan. So this week we're getting into the art movements moving in the 20th century that go right into World War I and a little bit after. So we were asked to give 3 examples of how World War I impacted this movement. As I was reading, I noticed that there was some things that happened leading to the war, some movements that happened solely during the war, and kind of the aftermath. So let's have a rundown of those 3. So the first way I see that certain artists during kind of leading into the war got drafted and were killed in action. So such groups like the group based out of Munich, Germany called the Der Blaue Reiter, they were part of the Expressionist movement. And during that time, there was showing a lot of anxiety and emotion and just being out of the norm. So that's where you get the swirly face, like the Scream picture, and it's a lot going on and a lot more deeper thought going into that. And kind of after that group was somewhere drafted and then killed, the other members were Russian and then were sent back to Russia. This kind of broke up that kind of leading group of expressionists during that time, and that stalled the expressionist movement in that way. And the same way for Antonio Sant'Elia of the futurist movement down in Italy. So he was coming up with this really futuristic, beautiful architecture and things like that. And the same way that he joined the war and was killed, which left a lot of his architecture and buildings to just never be built. And that just affected that kind of movement on both ends of that in Germany and the Italian artists, that they kind of just faded away, and a lot of their ideas and things like that just never really picked up on and advanced as far as those artists would have been able to do throughout their whole life. Secondly, they have this expansion of this movement called Dada movement, and they exploded during the war. So we're kind of getting into the war itself, and this was a movement that was a reaction to the nationalism that many thought led to World War I. They mocked the materialistic and nationalistic attitudes. An example of the photograph by Hugo Ball in 1916 called the Reciting the Sound poem Karawane. And I'll show this. And so it kind of is a silly photo, and it depicts this lack of sense, referring to the European powers' inability to solve their problems that ended up ultimately leading to the war. And it's funny because you see the guy with like a cape and his little hat, and he's made out of cardboard, and it's kind of a slap joker in the face style movement during here. It was a really wild anti-art movement that then ended up leading to the development of the surrealism movement that inspired many's. And just like expressionism, after the war, this Dada movement just really fell apart, and after that, people just weren't into that silly mocking art, and it just wasn't that. Which brings me to my third reason, that after the war, many of French artists had pulled back from the radical experimentation as depicted in the artwork of Fernand léger and the 3 women. And you could see, just how more risque and how they put things in front and behind and made this, it was completely different than some of the other art that had gone on. Rather than resembling overlapping bits of low relief sculpture, artists in the school of Paris associated after the war, they wanted a return to order. And you can see this return to order from the wild painting of the 3 women to then this vestigial movement that emerged largely as a response to the horrors of the World War I, and they wished to remake society in its aftermath. As you can see in the composition 2 by Piet Mondrian in 1930, time has passed after the war, and you can see that viewing art as a social and spiritual redemption, also expressing a sense of order and harmony in the new society. They wanted something that they knew, that they were familiar with, that they could get back. And you can see that also in the other composition by Theo van Doesburg as well, called The Three Graces. My questions are: how would architecture differ today if designers were not affected by World War I? Second question I have is, how important was it for the art movement to embrace a return to order after World War I? So this is my take on the questions and the reading, and I hope everybody else is out there doing good and getting the videos down the same way, and we're learning a little bit more of how to do this and be a little more confident. So anyways, thank you for watching. I appreciate y'all, and I will see y'all in 2 weeks. Okay, bye guys.